All right, welcome everybody to the Synapse Philosophy Group. We are on the innate intelligence, principle number 20 in Stevenson's textbook. We're going through the senior text. We're on page 257, and we're breaking it down, okay? Article 336, innate intelligence, principle number 20. A living thing has an inborn intelligence within its body called innate intelligence. It is the local intelligence which has built a house for itself and keeps that house in repair, and is the intelligence to which the condition of the structure is of supreme importance. No one would deny that it requires intelligence to build a body. It cannot be denied that it takes intelligence to build even a tissue cell. No scientist, however clever, has been able to do it and never will, for it is a task of the infinite. It must be remembered that infinity is in a tissue cell just as much as in stellar space. It cannot be done by man, no matter how efficient his laboratories are. Moreover, man cannot even repair one of these tissue cells if it is damaged. The cells and the body are built according to a plan. It takes an infinitely wise architect to make those plans. Though scientists have studied anatomy and histology for centuries, their knowledge of the body leaves as much unexplored as darkest Africa before it was explored. Sugar is organic, having the formula C12H22O11. It is made by the innate intelligence of the plants. Let chemists make the same elements in the same portion, combine them chemically, and they will have a compound of CHO, but it will not be real sugar. Why? Because the infinite wisdom of innate intelligence was necessary. Let us step into our study, look upon innate intelligence less romantically and more scientifically. That's important. Not as a little God coldly aloof somewhere in our bodies, whom we personify with a capitalized name, or whom the more conceited of us think we must chastise occasionally, but as a mathematical law of nature. Interesting. Okay. Anybody have any insights or want clarity, or what do you feel? I posted in this one with this that remember that that infinity is in a tissue cell just as much as in stellar space.
I marked that one too.
You know, yeah. That's yes, we forget about that. And then at the end, I forgot about this part. You know, we're personifying it and chastising our innate. Oh, I feel, poor me, I'm so sick, blah, 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 whatever. And where really we're as divine as the perfection of the entire universe in every single one of our cells. Wow. I think that's amazing.
I think when we go from an intellectual grasp of this to a heartfelt, wholehearted experience inside of us, then we become able to deliver the art of chiropractic in a little bit extra. This is not just a mental thing.
I think that is the key right there, Steve, really serving chiropractic.
I agree.
What do you guys think? Anybody else? I have been asked numerous times if you have to believe in God to be a chiropractor. People have asked me that many times. Even in Mexico, I've had students ask me that very many times. And, it's a tough question to ask without putting your own, religious spin or something onto it. What do you guys think about that?
I think that, certain people's definition of what God is probably, is frustrating as, when you talk to a layperson and you try to explain how many different techniques of chiropractic there are. And the main objective, at least for most of the chiropractic techniques, are to remove the interference and allow the innate expression to flow through. So I think that there are so many different, somebody says, well, my definition of God is the reasoning for everything, the cosmos and the exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and different things like that. And you got to say to them, okay, that's cool, and then, other people might say, well, my definition of God is, going through the Son, Jesus Christ. And you say, okay, that's cool. And then some people say, well, I don't believe in God. I'm like, well, what are you? They're like, well, I'm an atheist. Okay, I'm like, and then what I do is I back them into science. I'm like, something happened, right? I mean, something happened, right? I say, okay, so are you grateful for that happening because you were born and, it's the fact that your mom and dad got together and donated a sperm and egg, and her innate intelligence made you, which is 75 quadrillion red blood cells. That's unexplainable. You're thankful for that. Yeah. I was like, so why don't you just call that your dad? I mean, you're call that God. I mean, you believe in, so I think that, do you have to believe in God? There's so many definitions of what that is. I mean, there's just, so it's, I would have to say, if you encompassed all the definitions as a chiropractor, I would think that you would have a better explanation of chiropractic to the layperson coming into your office. I would think, but do you have to believe in God? I don't know if I'd want to go to that chiropractor if they didn't believe.
Well, I'll tell you, there's another statement somebody once said that I love. It said, I'd rather be an atheist with a mind of wonder than a religious person with dogma.
Okay.
Yeah, I think playing off of what David was just saying, that I think that many of the concepts that people are brought up with about God and the things how they relate to God are limiting. And that's why I like the term universal intelligence as a better term than God. We get brought up thinking certain things, and we get beliefs put in our head, what Larry Markson called mother, father, teacher, preacher, and we buy into that, but they're inculcated into us. And for me, the integration of universal intelligence with the religious beliefs that I had became seamless. And I talk about it much more as a universal intelligence and that organizational factor in the universe that's overall, but is unsolicitous, and not that, I haven't dealt with prayer 100%, but people say, pray for somebody. And I usually say something about, may they be surrounded by love and light and protected and, and help the people that are there and surround the people that are there to help them, because there is energy that can be transmitted between people across space and time, and there's actually been science about that.
Oh yeah.
But so that prayer works, but it's a sending of energy, and it's in some sense that's the innate intelligence in you communicating across space and time, and it's the universal intelligence that it's a part of and apart from allows that to happen.
Now,
hey, how about Arnold? Last time he spoke in Atlanta, you were there at the Manso Center with Wade, and Arno said that he said that I don't get involved with God and chiropractic or something. He said innate intelligence, or he says universal intelligence, because how can you say to somebody, my universal intelligence is better than yours? Remember when he said that? I don't remember exactly how it went, but he goes, oh, say oh, Jesus is better than Buddha or this, but you can't say my universal intelligence is better than yours because it's all the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me back up a minute. Now, our basic tenet of our philosophy, now I asked that about God, but what about a higher power? Because our basic tenets are universal intelligence, innate intelligence, educated intelligence. And then our philosophy goes out from there in reality, right? So now that's this, let's pose that question. What about, now we talk about the atheist, which is absolutely fine, you know, and this is not a judgment moment for whoever's listening. We're just breaking it down because we're getting into now innate intelligence. That it is the expression of universal intelligence because there is an intelligence in all matter. And in our 33 principles, just like this one says, there's no denying that it takes intelligence to build even a tissue cell. No scientist can do that. So it has to, the principle itself is stating there is an intelligence greater than educated. I guess that's what I'm saying. Intelligence higher than educated. So is there a necessity for a universal understanding, universal intelligence understanding in chiropractic?
Is there a necessity?
Does someone need to, do you have to, or are we just, if someone doesn't believe in a universal intelligence or have a concept of it, then we're moving bones for better function?
I think whether you're, well, I'd like to pass on that for a second and hear what my colleagues have to say about
it. Well, I'll go to Triune here for a minute from Reggie, and that's the thing that I've said many times to people, which is innate is a part of and yet apart from the universal intelligence. Innate intelligence must be perfect as it's a perfection of creativity itself. It's always 100% and functioning 100% as the active organizing force in every living thing. And then going down, as you said, you talk about when someone is born, innate intelligence is 100%, probably from conception, I have to say.
BJ said it was from birth, not a conception, but that's BJ. I agree with you, Alan.
I think that probably there's an innate intelligence I don't think it's the mom's intelligence that's creating the body and within her. I think that there is an innate from the moment of conception that guides that development process. But at birth, the educated brain is blank and learns as it goes.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
And so innate has full knowledge, educated has whatever it gets exposed to and buys into. May or may not be right, may or make bad decisions. Innate can never make a bad decision because it's part of the the perfect creation.
So
let me pause 1 second. Kimberly and Alex, you've been on before, but Kim too, just unmute yourself. You can raise your hand or just start speaking. Everybody is allowed time, okay? And there's no judgment. Nobody's right or wrong. This is absolute freedom, okay? That being said, go ahead, Dave.
So you think that, well, here's the question for you. Mother Jane, baby Anthony, right? Father Tom. Tom and Jane are in throes of passion, and sperm meets egg, and 350 million sperm are released. 350 survive the acidic area of the woman. One sperm actually gets into that egg and breaks the barrier. Let's call that point A. So at point A, when do you feel that the mother has a different innate intelligence within her? That's my question to you.
Can you rephrase that a little bit? I'm not sure if I get it.
I think that it's I think it's virtually instantaneous to allow there's something that happens at that moment where those two cells, which each have some level of innate intelligence as living cells, that at some point that becomes a new instant innate entity. That doesn't mean that the mother her innate has an instinct to protect, but will also reject that entity if at times.
So we'll say then, if I understand you correctly, we'll say that when the male releases his sperm, that sperm is actually, I mean, it's, it has guidance. It's like, but
that sperm has an innate intelligence, and so does the ovum.
And then coming together is the spark of life.
Right. So that.
But somehow when this gets to that intangible point, right? Of where does that change over that each one has an independent innate, and then it's one within an individual.
What about people that want to freeze their sperm, or put their sperm into a proper environment that protects it, and then they use it later? So is that stored potential innate energy? Yeah, I mean, that's,
there's an innate there's an innate intelligence in the sperm that gets stored.
Absolutely.
Each living cell has an innate intelligence. Every living cell.
He even talks about it in here. Every cell has as much intelligence as the cosmos.
Right, but is the sperm like universal intelligence, like a seed that has the potential of innate intelligence once it gets a spark of life?
Well, is it part of the man's innate intelligence, and then the females, and then it has one mission, and the acetylcholine, as it's using that up to get to what its one single mission is, it's not actually thinking. It's only transporting for an end result to create life. So does it have its own thinking ability or even repair? It actually doesn't repair. It just uses its energy and then it's done in reality.
I think the point of this is that there is an infinitely wise architect.
There we go.
In stellar space, in the sperm, in the egg, and that we get into semantics when you start using the word God. An atheist can be very much into an infinitely wise architect, but he calls himself an atheist because he doesn't believe in the religious interpretations. Yet, in order to be a chiropractor, there's got to be, in my opinion, a humility, respect, and wonder for this intelligence. Otherwise, you're practicing mechanically.
I follow that. Absolutely. I like that too. And it's reverence for something bigger than we are. It's just, even if you're in amazement of just, wow, your body's able to heal a cut, to me is really just a wow. Like, oh my goodness, let alone digesting your breakfast, right?
Because
now,
a wow.
Getting back on our topic here, really,
I want to go to Dave one more time on this, because I'm just thinking innate purpose is to adapt universal forces that are unsolicited. It's an adaptation. So is the moment of conception where the sperm enters the egg, where there's that intangible intelligence from without and within at that moment creates an instant adaptive change where the two innate intelligences that were in the individual cells then adapt instantaneously because that's their purpose, and it becomes not that they unite, but a new innate is manifest at that moment as an adaptive change that's supposed to happen by the course of the universe that we don't understand how it works.
And I'm going to relate it to this, okay, to this reading. The cells and the bodies are built according to a plan. Okay. It takes an infinitely wise architect to make those plans. What's the plan?
Stan.
Make a new plan, Stan. All right. But think about this. Okay. What's the plan? Is the plan just to build this body, or is we really talking about the infinite plan? You know, we're talking about destiny. Hi, Kim. Good to see you again. What did you get out of this reading? Anything? We got into a little bit of minutia, which is good. And we do that. Would you like any clarity? Want something clarified for yourself? I'll
What are you thinking about all this?
As an okay. This is right when we're getting into innate intelligence. And what he's telling us is we're not going to do this in a foofy way. We're going to do this properly. So from principle 20, I can't remember how many it goes on to, where we're getting into understanding innate intelligence. This is really the first step, because we've gone through universal and material, and we're getting into innate now, and then we're going to get into some educated. But to explain universal, he had to also talk about material body. But now we're getting into the innate system. I like it. Okay.
As a
Go ahead.
Not to get political, but as a chiropractor, anytime that you synthetically abort that happening, you're killing life, based on what we're saying. And I'm not asking, what people think is right or wrong, but based on what we just talked about, as soon as the sperm meets the egg and it starts creating life, and you know what? I'll even say it a different way. As soon as a weed comes up, and you see a little weed and you pull that out, you're killing life too. So whatever. Maybe I shouldn't have brought that up.
I don't think anybody denies that fact. And it's interesting because I go around in my yard and my complex here and pull out volunteer trees all the time. And I go, sorry, this is not the right place for you. And I apologize as I'm pulling it out of the ground. I'm either verbally or just in my head. But it's a conscious thing. I said, I am separating this thing from its life source, but this is not a good place for that particular tree to be going. And I can't replant them all.
I have this formula that it's called Dr. Haig's. I'm just thinking of a name for it. I was calling it Dr. Haig's weed killer. And my sister, my 7-year-old daughter said, why don't we not use the word killer? Why don't you say destroyer? It's a lot better. All right.
The annihilator, that's you.
Yeah. Well, life is life. And, we're not talking about the preservation of life or the morality of life and those type of things. What we're doing is understanding innate intelligence better to be better servers in chiropractic, right? Whatever people's choices are, I think that's important for your sovereignty as a human being to make your own choices. Now, where we are, when he's talking about what is the plan for the body, for the cell, the architect, what is he talking about? Who is the architect? What is the great intelligence? He's using the term universal. And I keep going back to God, universal intelligence, because they said people aren't quite ready for the word God yet. So we're going to use the word universal, right? They're not ready to hear spirit when we're talking about this. We're going to use innate intelligence. That's from Dee and BJ said it too. So we do allude to those things is what I mean. Getting back to that original question, a wise architect is another term. Okay. So having a reverence, I think we've talked about that, and understanding it's not that we have a religious belief is not necessary, but having a respect for a power that heals the body and also made the body, right? Like we say, like it's on my truck. I have it on my business cards. That's what I'm really getting at with that question before. but we broke it down pretty well. A lot of good insight. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Alex. Anybody else? Anything else? Or should we go on to the next one? I think that's a move on. What's that? That's a move on silence. Okay. Now, this is an important one. It's called the mission of innate intelligence. And I think that's where we're getting to. That's why I kind of wanted to move on. Principle 21, page 258. The mission of innate intelligence is to maintain the material of the body, of a living thing. That's an important part of it, in active organization. It is the ambition of innate intelligence to build the body and then keep it actively organic. The universe would not be complete without everything. Hence, a universe could not be complete with only unadapted forces and universal laws of the destructive kind. In order to complete the cycle, there must be constructive. In order to complete the cycle, a local and specific application of intelligence is necessary. What do you think?
It goes to universal forces are unsolicitous and are therefore destructive to material things, so that everything breaks down. Everything breaks down. We've said before, we are stardust. We're golden, right? All the cells in our bodies are from novas from a billion years ago that broke down and then got to this planet and then became a planet here, and then eventually people developed and passed down, but we're all part of the earth, but we're all part of the universe that way. But it's those forces that work on us are all breaking us down. The earth will disappear one day. It's hard for us to conceive of that. And we think we're so important for our 70 years that we're here, or 80 years or whatever. But in reality, it's all ephemeral. But universal's innate's job is to adapt the universal forces when they come into the body to allow us, in any living thing, to adapt the universal forces that act on it, the destructive forces, and adapt them where possible to allow an adaptation and survival.
What Stevenson says, universal needs innate intelligence as much as, from what I'm seeing, almost as much as universal innate needs universal. It needs the adaptive forces because universal is unadapted. To be all things, it can't be just destructive. It has to be constructive to complete the cycle. You need the innate intelligence to create so universal can be destructive on something.
They're a couple that have to work together.
Yes.
Without innate, there'd be no organization. There'd be organization on some level, but it wouldn't, in living things, we wouldn't have any adaptability. A rock just breaks down. It doesn't adapt to its environment.
Right. It has universal forces, but no innate. Innate is, and that's why the mission of innate intelligence is to maintain the material of the body of a living thing in active organization. We've all heard, you get a Purdue chicken and you shove some antibiotics in it and some goji berries, and it's not going to come back to life because the innate intelligence has gone, but it still has universal forces.
He said goji berries.
It still looks like a duck, but it don't quack like one no more.
Don't quack like a duck, but it tastes a lot better when it's cooked.
which is again universal forces acting on the material of the body of the duck that is no longer it's still universal forces of its own, when universal material, but no longer has an innate intelligence to adapt to make it pull its feet out of the fire.
And you leave it in those universal forces, the heat, over a period, and it comes back to carbon eventually.
Yeah.
Right? It is destructive back to its primal elements to be reused again. So it's the recycler of the organic.
Yeah, it breaks it down.
Innate,
Breaks it down.
innate to universal, back to innate.
Innate, universal, back to innate, back to universal, the cycle. Yeah. Did he mention the cycle? Yeah. In order to complete the cycle, there must be construction. In order to complete the cycle, a local and specific application of intelligence is necessary.
We talk about destructive and constructive survival values. And that's, you have destructive forces or destructive survival value. Innate meets those forces and adapts them. And either it either meets them and is able to adapt them, and they are modified to be constructive in some way, or they continue to be destructive and cause cause damage. Until that happens, there's not an injury, there's not a damage, there's a meeting of the forces within and without. Universal forces and innate force that are meeting, and then there's an adaptive change on some level that would require other discussion. how that plays out on different levels of, different things that can be affected different ways as those forces come together, whether it's a massive force or whether innate is interfered with and can't meet it, whether it's the right time for innate, whether it's not the right time for innate, it can't get the time, it's interfered with, and the speed is too much or too little in response. There's all kinds of play there, but it's the forces coming together that create the response.
Anyone else? Now, how does this, studying this, I'm bringing it back to practice, to service.
John, I'll say something about that.
Go ahead, Steve.
We are chemicals, basically from the earth, dirt, and we're animated by this thing called life intelligence. And in my practice, I'm excited about that on a day-to-day level, that I'm an actual meeting place of the finite with the infinite.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Of the matter and the intelligence. We are the blending of the matter and intelligence. If you don't have wonderment with that, I don't care how religious you are. I don't care if you're if you're a atheist with that wonderment, you're on the right track, because you're going with reverence and you're saying, there's certain things I just don't know. And that way, when you practice, you trust in that intelligence and you do less. You do as little as possible to get the job done, because you understand that master architect is the one that's doing it.
Yep. Anyone else? I like it, Steve. Thank you. It's all about reverence, I feel, and respect.
I do too.
Yeah. I can't fix you, but we have to be, like BJ said, I start using the word we. It's me and God. We get the message of, how to give the input to help you the best. For me, it's the least amount of input with the greatest amount of outcome. Without respecting this amazing thing we can call universal intelligence, and how it's expressing in one's being, I think we're limiting ourselves as chiropractors by not doing that. And some people would see it the opposite way, and I understand their point of view. And I've had those, I hate to say it, arguments at certain times, but, that's the vitalistic, mechanistic understanding of what we do. And Pasquale said, we were at one of his meetings. We're in Williams Lake near New Paltz. And he said, I recorded the whole weekend. He said, send it to the guy who runs NYCC, because this is why, because we were speaking in a mechanistic way with a vitalistic consciousness. And he said, we can be both, and being both is absolutely important. Actually, it's not really one or the other. Being vitalistic, you still have to have a mechanistic action and being connected with people. And I think both are important. We can meld them and have understandings of both. And having a separation of the two, I think, is absolutely unnecessary, because we've had these conversations through the years that I have a greater concept of that for myself. And that's my thought.
Well, I think science is primarily mechanistic, but it continues to validate things that we deal with vitalistically. That it's a reciprocal, and that's one of the things that I think that I'm conscious of sciences all the time, and the things I'm reading little bits here and there of them, and constantly amazed at what science is figuring out, and going, how does this work with what I know chiropractically? How does this work with my chiropractic philosophy? And it's amazing how much that is being validated all the time. And I think that we need to help. Part of our job as modern day philosophers, if you will, is to help integrate that into our profession and help people understand that, it's one thing that we said 100 years ago that people, didn't get sick as often when they got adjusted. Now we start to understand why, more about how physiologically that works, and how, the stress responses changed when you adjust somebody, and that all fits together now. And so that's, I'm rambling, sorry.
That's okay. Kim, do you think at Life University, if we had discussions like this more often about 33 principles and breaking it down, it would give people a greater purpose in their studies at school?
200%.
I think as students, we enjoy this. I think the problem for me comes in carrying that over into the academic world and the CCE and trying to mesh the two worlds together. For me, it's science and philosophy, and it works beautifully together. But there's in my opinion, a disconnect. And what we're being taught is just, this is what happens apart from, this is what we do to bring it into caring for somebody.
Yeah.
In the academic world, because for me, I can't separate any of this stuff. And that's part of my frustration personally is I think that our instructors should have these conversations with us when we're in science classes. And a lot of our instructors for basic science classes are not DCs. And that's being ruled by accrediting agencies, which doesn't make any sense to me. So I think there needs to be a turnaround, maybe internally within the schools, for us to step up and say, this is what we want, and demand that.
Well,
Hey, I'd like
ahead.
to pick.
Go ahead.
So when there's this doctor named Dr. Arnaud Bernier, and I listened to him speak, and I decided to go to chiropractic school. Not only did I decide to go to chiropractic school, I went to his one of his boot camps in Durango, Colorado. That was 7 nights and 8 days of just being dipped into exactly what we're going over right now. And it was, learn how to adjusting and everything. This is before prereqs. He told us, he said, listen, when you go to chiropractic school, they will attempt to fill your head with histology, biology, endocrinology, gynecology, and everything else. He says, your only job in chiropractic school is to go there and to get the certificate that says that you can practice in your state, which means you get your chiropractic college degree, and then you pass your boards. That's what chiropractic school is designed for. The philosophy that you're getting here tonight, the philosophy that you have in Joe Strauss's blue books or the green books, or that you're going to get from Haig or Wade Port, or the tapes from Sigafus and Reggie Gold and Pasquale Sarasoli and Dr. Sid and all these great chiropractors, that's the chiropractor's responsibility to do that. And so when you're in school, just say to yourself, I'm CCE, and my teachers that are non-DCs, they have a job to do, and that's it. And draw a line in the sand and be like, I will not let this into my open-hearted philosophical heart and drive and love of chiropractic. This is on this side of the fence. This is what they're teaching me, and I'm going to retain this information to pass my boards and
That's
to get
it.
license in whatever state. That's it. And then, guys, do you want to, add to that?
Pasquale told me, he said, you just get out of school and then you forget all that stuff.
That's
Just
right.
as quickly as possible. This is, the important thing is, while Dave and I were in school, the CCE passed the ruling that the basic sciences had to be taught by PhDs. And then all school went to hell in a handbasket. The next part is, I've had to talk with multiple college presidents about this, about the spirituality in it, and it's in every single one of our books. There's almost not one green book does not talk about spirituality in some way, and they're not allowed to talk about it, and it's being pushed out completely. Spirituality is a very, very important factor within chiropractic. It is in everything from Palmer's laws of life, of just connecting the safety pin cycle. What is connecting? The spirit of life in the body. So what we're doing here is creating that foundation for eternity. And we put these on YouTube, they're on Spotify. Creating this is not just for what we're doing right now, but it's for generations to come. And if we're saving chiropractic, it might be this moment. Someone listens to this in 25 years and chiropractic is something else, and it comes back for all we know. The reality of it is, chiropractic needs spirituality as much as spirituality needs chiropractic. Pasquale used to say, our spiritual friends, the guides, they need us as much as we need them. And getting this understanding of chiropractic in a spiritual level, even if it's just scratching the surface to know it exists, is powerful in our service to the people, because it's the people that count the most. Thanks for that, Dave. And thanks, Kimberly and Alan and Steve and Alex.
Kim, let me just say one thing here. Kim,
go ahead.
You want to make sure that while you're learning all that science, whatever you can do to try and integrate it with the philosophy for yourself, and to talk to other people, talk to other students that are willing to listen, offer it to them and see if they choose to listen, but, help them understand and talk it down with people as best you can, because talking about it and trying to integrate it, read some of these books, get Stevenson and read it. They can't stop you from reading a book, and you go through it and read it, and there you go, and talk to and have a chat and get together with a couple of people and talk about it like we're doing here. You can do that. We've had time to think about this stuff a lot, and so we mouth off about it. But you guys, I sat in school at Sherman and at Life. I started at Sherman. I graduated from Life, and we used to talk about this kind of stuff in school at lunch. Talk about it with your friends. Get together and have a couple of beers and talk about philosophy and how it relates to your science classes.
Fantastic.
Don't let them beat you down.
That is
we're here
it.
for you.
That's their job, is to beat us down. And what we're doing is shining our light brighter. Okay.
We're here for you anytime.
we're gonna stop here at this section because there's some meat in between principle 21 and 22 that I think may need some of it to be on its own. And I think we could start with this next week. Okay, does that sound good for everybody? Good. So we're gonna start. I'll outline these pages and then we'll go from there next week. Anybody have anything else?
Hope everybody has people that are Jewish on this call have a nice meaningful fast this week.
Yontif.
And Yontif. And so there.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, have a beautiful night. I love and appreciate you all, and you're the 1%. And Kim, I hope I see you more here, okay? Or maybe even down here in Florida. Steve, do you have something?
I think he's waving bye-bye.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Peace out, man.